Okay, mate, when you're ready.
Okay, today's courageous conversation, this is the brief. Industries, manufacturing, medium-sized, 200 to 10,000, domestic only, U.S. domestic. We are production line managers, you are, and your managers. Today is day 3 of an off-site strategy update. Jim has brought me in as the last session before the CEO addresses you all with a wrap-up speech. The challenge for you is that the organization has been manufacturing paper in over 50 small towns across the U.S. for over 100 years, and submitting to international competition, the organization is now consolidating the 50 locations to just 3, where they will be focusing on manufacturing the highest grade of paper only. Until now, this production line accounted for 10% of the work, and the participants, you, have only learned of this strategy over the last 3 days in this off-site retreat. When you've been given no opportunity for any decision-making, it was just handed down to you. You've been given no opportunity to shape the decision-making, rather you've been provided with the business case, the 12-month plan for closures, the legal responsibilities as managers for the redundancy processes, which are severance packages, redundancy. And you will have to take your teams through all of this. The application process for the remaining jobs should they or their teams wish to apply. So new job descriptions and all that. Your mood's extremely low. Well, your mood's just low. The majority of participants have worked in the organization for their whole careers. Remember, small towns, whole careers. And so unemployment is fairly high. Management team have presented the extended redundancy process as a benefit in the recognition of the service the employees have put into the company, so as to give people time to find further employment. So it's a pretty good package would be my interpretation. Although managers, the participants are very close with their teams, more like a family environment. You have never received any soft skills training in the past. Key stakeholders and AOB, the CEO was recommended by Jim, by a friend who had attended one of the sessions on influencing at their tech firm. And this is the first time that any investment has been made in soft skills. CEO wants it to be upbeat. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat. And therefore thinks that ending a heavy 3-day retreat with this information with Jim will be beneficial to the managers to go out there and start pumping it up. Any questions about the brief? Okay. Good morning. That was very lively. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Jim's Courageous Conversation Workout. I am Karel, Kreshek, and this morning we are going to spend 90 minutes working on overcoming our fears with having courageous conversations. That's our ultimate goal. I have spent the past 6 years or so working with companies, large, small, nonprofit, for-profit. Some who think they're for-profit and really aren't. Working on soft skills and communications skills, team building, leadership skills, learning how to communicate better. Today, that's what we're going to do. I know you have a huge project ahead of you. You're going through a lot of restructuring. You've got to have a lot of courageous conversations coming up. They're scary. They're difficult. We're going to tackle that. Okay. This morning is going to be fast-paced. Jim is a 90-minute workout. You're going to be working your brains in ways that we've probably never worked them before for some of us. Some of us are used to working them that way, but we're going to be quick, fast-paced. Don't worry about taking notes. We've got handouts that we'll give out to you in a little bit. It will have everything in there that you're going to need. It will even have resources in there for you for future references if you want to do some more reading afterwards. Okay? Okay, if you have any questions, even though it's a quick workshop, don't worry, ask. If we can't get to it right then and there, I'll let you know. We can always follow up at the end. Okay? And the other thing is participate. We're going to learn from all of us. That's the best way to learn. I'm not going to be up here standing and regurgitating things that I know. It's about all of us learning from each other. Okay? All right, are we ready?
Yes.
All right, let's go. Courageous conversations. over the next 90 minutes, here's our agenda for the morning, we are going to talk about identifying and defining what a courageous conversation is. For some of us, it might mean one thing, for others, another thing. We're also going to look at what they do to us, what stops us from having them, why they're important to have. Who would have thought, right? They're important for us to have. We're going to talk about getting over the hump of the fear by tackling and learning about four tactics, okay, that are going to help you start the conversation, get through the conversation, and end the conversation successfully. That's the goal. We're going to also look at your situation in particular, okay, and come out the end with 5 tips or so that will help you in the future. Now, I'm not going to ask you to walk away remembering everything. The handout will help you with that. Or taking everything and saying, I have to use everything. Right? Today is about picking and choosing what's going to work for you. Okay? That's it. These courageous conversations are so hard for me. I just lost my place. Okay. Take a moment and think about what a courageous conversation might mean for you in general. Its impact on you, what you might define it to be. Even think particularly of a courageous conversation that you need to have in the future. Okay. And I want you to have a particular courageous conversation in your mind as we go through the next 90 minutes.
Is this one-on-one or like an announcement I might make to my team about the restructure?
Well, right now I'd like for you to just think of it how you want to think of it. If it's a one-on-one, great. If the courageous conversation to you at this moment needs to be about presenting something to your team for, then go for it. But right now it's about you identifying what a courageous conversation is for you. And make sure that when you are thinking of the courageous conversation in your mind, you are able to share that with somebody else. So try not to make it too intimate if you don't want to share with others. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's about participating. So we're going to be doing a lot of dialoguing and a lot of talking. Okay? Okay, does everybody have something in mind that they can use for the day? Okay, excellent. All right, everybody up, let's go. So I don't know about you, but for me, it takes a lot of courage to send food back if it's cold when it gets to my table in a restaurant. Really, a lot of courage. I feel, well, we'll get there when we get there. Okay, so if you sent some food back, or even a coffee at Starbucks or Coffee Bean, as of this morning, stand at this start of the line. I want you to line up. And if it was years ago, come on down to this end. So if everybody could just line up in accordance with the most recent time they sent food back to them from being served.
3 months.
3 months. Wow.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
So
3 months.
3 months.
I think it's for about 5.
5. Oh my gosh. Or either the food has been fabulous, right? I'm sorry, you moved. You switched. Was that mean you're before 3 months? I mean after 3 months, before 5? Okay.
A year ago.
A year ago, 4
Years.
I don't think I've ever
sent
sent food back.
Oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. We have people here who either have food always delivered perfectly the way that it was ordered, or you are all petrified of having courageous conversations. I'm going to put you into pairs now. So Deanna and Joan, if you guys can work together, and Sebastian and Barry, if you can work together, and Ford and Mary, if you can work together. Sit down. And what I'd like you to do is keeping your courageous conversation in mind. Can you all see this all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So keeping your courageous conversation in mind, discuss amongst the two of you, your partners, what might make a courageous conversation, what it means to you, why they might be so hard to have, and what stops you from having them. Okay, and you'll have about 4 minutes or so to have the conversation, be able to, each of you, participate. Any questions with the directions? Okay, why don't you guys take a leap and go for it?
What makes it?
So what makes conversations courageous?
One that's
hard.
There's potential for non-compressive situation.
Yes.
I think that's part of it, right? They're more depressed than they're emotional.
Some fear,
So
Yeah.
it's not just logical.
Yeah.
It's
I'm trying to think about what requires my courage,
Yeah.
so something I'm
We
afraid
have to
of.
deliver bad
Why are they
news.
so?
Maybe because of the reaction I'm going to get from the
Yes.
person, so it's a negative message,
Yeah.
or it's like
Do
you
you
said,
have anyone
an
in
argument.
particular?
Yeah, like in our particular situation, I know.
Everyone's getting devastated, but anyone you have
That's
a
right.
relationship with,
Yeah.
it's going to be much harder.
Well, and then the other thing is courageous is I don't really
Yeah.
to know I have to present.
And the delaying is
Like,
worse
okay,
than-
this is
the
worst.
awful.
It's actually
I have to
worse than
present.
actually
You
doing
know,
it.
yes,
So
I'm
they're
a
like, okay, I'll do it.
supervisor,
I
and I
don't think so.
try to help them, really
Do you think you can tell that to your team?
I think they've got a great future. It's unfortunate that a great future is not there.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I agree with
future.
is how I make sure myself, like this is my job about, being,
That's what I'm saying.
showing
It's
my
like
dismay
that's the
without,
bad news, and I think they could have had a great future. That's great things here. They love it.
If we're going to 50 sites to read.
I think.
because I'm information about my job.
But. I'm pretty smart.
Yeah.
So you don't really know where.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried, but
Well,
I think
I don't think we can refuse that
devastated.
conversation.
Yes,
It's hard we can even think about.
But I think it could be more like an announcement or discussion. So I think if I were to avoid just announcing it without inviting anybody to talk about it.
yes. I totally get that, and I think I would do that because then I could sort of, I could say it and run away into my head.
Because what is that mean? Ultimately, they can vent, but discussing it's
Well-
to change things.
Not necessarily irrelevant.
I guess the only
Because
because
you're gonna have courageous
we really need
conversations
to have
with
this on the
someone
whole
and
severance package
professionals.
and the,
And this workout, hopefully,
explaining that.
with the next week, next 2 weeks.
Or if people are confused, oh, or if they want to pull back their answer and fill out templates.
In a week, or
And I
how do I
think
say
that makes, I might not do that,
Or
because I
what am I
don't think,
gonna
I don't
do
think
afterwards?
No, and I think we won't, when we talk to our staff, they're just gonna hear things are changing.
That makes
And
sense.
sometimes it's gonna understand.
I know it's hard, I've been through it too,
So I guess that vagueness maybe merits more of a conversation.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
That's how when
It's not
you're
final.
downside. That's how it works.
Yeah.
But we have to
I
try
think
to
for me,
take it, having never seen it, remember that we're managers and we have to talk to our teams.
I don't want to
Having to give them the information as
Oh,
much
exactly.
with integrity as
It's
possible.
likability. For me, it's like, I just don't like people to get,
Yeah.
cry or to get angry. I'd rather have them be sort of calm.
Okay, just another minute and then we're going to wrap it up.
yeah, I don't mind,
So,
I don't mind if they freak out as much.
You're a
As long as they're not mad at me.
it's gonna be for you.
Because I'm so emotional, I don't mind
My
emotion,
mind
I just don't want it directed.
What's
Uh,
else is going to happen? You guys are done, you can finish all three. I hate that I have to
I
reserve.
think we're good.
I think we're done too,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Get them
So that's what makes it courageous for me.
Why are they so hard to have and what stops us from having them similar questions?
Oh, great question. We're going to get there in just a moment.
Okay.
Excellent. Great. Oh, you guys are done. Excellent. Let's bring it back in. Curious if you'd like to share what you came up with, and maybe some of it will resonate with others.
Yeah, well, we had different things that stop us. I was saying that I really want to be liked by everyone. So I don't like when people are mad at me, and Ford's,
Yeah, I just don't want them to yell or cry. I don't want this weird, crazy reaction.
The emotional reactions sometimes are hard to manage, right? Does anybody else feel that way sometimes? I feel that way with a 17-year-old kid. So I understand what you're saying. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too, so that's a really good positive thing to bring up on how to overcome that. Anybody else have something different maybe that they'd like to share?
High stakes.
High stakes.
What makes it high stakes? And I think why they're so hard to have is because you're worried that the situation after the conversation will be worse than the situation before the conversation.
So the relationship is what you...
All of this is the general situation. I mean, it could be you might damage a relationship,
Uh-huh.
but you might actually make the situation worse from the conversation. Your context, your situation might be worse having had the conversation than it was before.
Has that ever happened? Or is that?
I'm sure, if you ask me for an example, I'm not sure I can come up with one,
Okay.
but I'm sure it's happened where I've had a conversation, actually, stuff's got worse rather than better.
Okay, some of you are nodding, so I think we're in agreement here. Let's take a look at actually how Patterson and his team defined a courageous conversation. You mentioned the stakes are high, emotions are strong, right? Emotions are strong, and opinions may vary. I heard Marian mention earlier you didn't know if you agreed with what you were going to have a discussion about. So based on all of this, it also talks about the discussion is between 2 or more people. So you mentioned earlier, Ford, is this a conversation between me and somebody else or me delivering a message to a team? So it can be both, right? It can be both. So excellent job because you're all defining it perfectly and you didn't even know what the definition was before we got started. Science actually has talked to us. How does science talk to us? That was
I hear it.
No. There has been science that has proven, actually, that having a courageous conversation improves our immune system. So then,
What do you mean?
if you look at this and you think, really, that improves our immune system? I don't know about you, but I literally, physically get wound up when I'm about to have a courageous conversation. My stomach goes crazy, I start to sweat a little bit, it physically impacts me, and I'm thinking, really? So it's supposed to help my immune system? I don't understand. So let's talk about possibly what stops us from having these conversations, because I think we're going to end up learning a little bit more about overcoming the stopping and getting healthier. That make sense? So what could possibly stop you? I know that you had that in your conversation. What might stop you from having these types of conversations?
Well, I think what Sebastian was saying about you don't want to make things worse.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit more for yourself? He mentioned it, but how does it
Yeah,
maybe
well,
affect you?
for me, again, it's a lot of the emotion and a lot of people, like, I just want everyone to love me. I don't want to have the conversation because I don't want the outcome to be that they don't like me. So if I could just make the announcement and run away, that would be preferable.
And I'd just say, our CEO is going to announce the change that's coming.
Right.
I don't know if talking to my staff's going to help at all. We're just going to, I don't know, might make it worse. Like talking to them about it.
Let me add something to what you just said. You have all been here for years, and so has your staff, right? You consider yourself like a family. So when there's something difficult to talk about with your family, it might be scary and hard, but you do it. Okay? You treat each other with respect and honesty, and you talk about what needs to be talked about. What ends up happening is your relationship is stronger. Hopefully, we're going to show you some key things today that are going to help you have that same sort of conversation with your team members. Okay, so that your relationship at the end of it will still be okay, or at least be the way you want it to be going in. So let's see how we define what stops us, so to speak. Here are a few things that we look at with what stops us. And I can tell you that, I think I just mentioned that I literally physically get anxiety ridden. I wish I had gone through this workout before I went to my boss years ago when he asked me, he actually let me go and do some work with another team. I was his executive assistant. I was in school full-time, raising a family full-time, and he allowed me actually to go and work with the organizational effectiveness team at the organization because he knew that that was what I was studying, right? And he promised me 15 hours a week in that team. Every time I'd be over there doing work, he'd call me in. I wasn't ever able to get involved. And I thought, I got to talk to him about this because I really want to learn. And if I keep getting called back to him, I'm not going to have these 15 hours. If I had only gone through this to see what stops me, right? Why is it stopping me? Overcome my fears, which we're going to talk about today, maybe I would have been more successful and I would have been able to have that conversation. As I mentioned also earlier, if we have these conversations, it's healthier for us. Believe it or not, there's scientific fact out there and research by Glaser and his wife and partners who have come out and said, actually weaker. Your immune system is weaker if you don't go out and have these conversations. Not only are you personally weaker and not as strong internally and externally, but your team, right? Your department, your organization. Organizations thrive when they have people in their organization who have these courageous conversations. It's beneficial to us all to have them. Scary, nonetheless, but beneficial. Okay. What I'd like to do now is show you our map, our model. Okay. We're going to try and talk about now, we're not going to try, we are going to talk about preparing ourselves and overcoming our fears of these conversations. Okay? And you'll see here lots of circles, meaning it's cyclical. It's not linear. It's a conversation. It's a dialogue. Okay, so we're going to look at 4 tactics to overcome and have a successful conversation. We're going to prepare. We're going to look at telling our stories. Telling our stories. Listening. Listening plays a key factor in having a courageous conversation. And then managing the reactions. So we're going to put it all together for you. Okay?
What do you
yes?
mean, tell your story?
Telling your story is when you are going to your manager or the person who you need to talk to, you are going to explain yourself. Explain with emotions, explain with data, whatever it is that you need to get your point across, your story. Okay? We're going to get further into that after we look at how to prepare to have a conversation. Okay. All right, great. So the idea behind preparing conversation is to not only think about when and where you want to have this conversation, but literally writing down questions, writing down thoughts to help you prepare for the conversation. Okay, I'm going to actually pass out right now some handouts and pens for you. Don't open them yet, please. We're going to do an exercise in just a moment. Do you need a pen? Yes, please. There you go, Barry. Joan? Okay, let me get you another one. Now, with your partner who you discussed your courageous conversation, right, who you originally worked with earlier, just a few moments ago, take some time and discuss here, what do I want to achieve for me? So the idea behind this is you're going to think about what's the ultimate outcome you want from this conversation, right? And a successful, courageous conversation is not only when you're thinking about yourself, but it's when you're thinking about what the person's needs are who you're having the conversation with, whether it's your team's needs, for it, as you mentioned earlier, talking about others, or your individual person's needs, okay? Parent, child, coworker. Okay, so let's open these up and we'll walk through a little bit. You'll see for the first flap, just open the one tab. Preparing in the middle section. Okay, let me give you an example so that it can help you possibly. I'm going to be very simplistic here. Fixing my car, I need my car fixed. And I certainly don't want to spend a lot of money, and I know it's going to cost me a lot of money. Okay? So for me, I want to go to my brother-in-law who owns an auto body shop, but I want to save face. Okay? And I want to be respectful of him doing business, right? But for me, I don't want to have to fork out a lot of money. I want to come out intelligent about why I know I need my car fixed. And I want to look like I'm not going in there as a typical female. I'm being stereotypical, okay? For him, I don't want it to interrupt his business line. I don't want it to interrupt the way that he's doing business. I don't want it to be so much money that he's going to lose money. I want him to charge me, but not so much, right? And for the relationship, I want us to walk out of there with respect. And I want it to be the same, if not even better. Because I came to him not as the sister-in-law with, can you fix my car? I actually came to him with some facts and with my emotions of, hey, I need my car fixed because I've got to go to work. Can you help me? Whatever my preparatory questions and statements are for it. Any questions with that? Simplistic, I know, and you can use something simplistic if you want, if it helps you to further learn how to have these courageous conversations when it's more difficult. Whatever works for you now is okay. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is take a couple of minutes and discuss how you're going to prepare for your conversation that you need to have. And then I'll give you a cue, and then you guys can take a few moments and jot down your own notes. So first take some time to talk about it amongst yourselves. Okay?
Yeah.
So we have to have this conversation.
We're still talking about it.
Yeah, I think I was still,
Yeah.
So for me, I want to deliver the message because I am told I have to.
Just like it
And I want to, I guess, challenge myself to have as a conversation instead of not just being one else.
And,
What about for you? What are you hoping to change?
yeah.
I don't want to feel
There's
smart.
much going on.
I don't want to,
So then
I mean, I don't want to somehow not be, I want to be
Yeah.
true to myself.
Yeah,
in what
let's go
I'm
down.
saying
For
in
them.
a way though that.
For them, I think they deserve to know
I can
as much as
try
they can now as early as they can.
You know,
They've got
do something that.
They've got to organize their life around whatever's going to happen, so that early.
Yeah.
Hopefully I come from.
Yeah, because I guess what we have a
I don't
12-month
wanna lose my
plan or
way.
something, so
Yeah.
the sooner we do this, the longer they have.
I think for them, I'd like to,
Yeah, or even if they don't need to, they've got to know.
Okay, out of mind.
Okay, if you can now take your conversation and put it onto paper, that would be wonderful. You have a few moments to do that. If you don't have everything worked out, that's okay. Just to give you a little start and an idea of where to go.
About something else we don't want to hear about.
Yeah, that's the part I'm really going to struggle with because I don't feel like I'm hopeful, so it's going to be hard for me to convey that to them, although I think it's a great thing because I feel like, I feel that way, but it'd be a great outcome for them if I could do that. But I think that
We're going to wrap it up in 10.
maybe another thing that I feel is
5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's bring it back in. And does anybody would like to share with us maybe some challenges that you found in preparing and answering these questions? Because it can be difficult. Gary?
For me, the main thing was, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I just
Uh-huh.
want to get it over with.
Yeah.
It's more stressful than waiting for it to happen. And for them, I want to make sure they understand their severance package and offer them any help in outplacement, getting placed, and really want to keep the relationships.
You want to keep the relationships. How do you want to keep the relationships?
And I want them solid. I don't want to be perceived as part of the enemy. I want to be
Okay.
perceived as someone who really wants to help, even though I have to
Okay. I understand. Does anybody else like to share or add on to what Barry just said? Deanna?
well, other than the tactical, I think, which was what Barry was addressing, like with the severance package, I desperately want to give them a message of hope on the other side of this. And I'm not sure how to carve that out, but just that idea of, yeah, this is kind of shitty, but there's something on the other side. And it can seem really difficult in a small town like this to have that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Completely verified. I completely understand what you're saying. Let's take a look at how to take what we've prepared and develop it into our story, right? Because we're going to now talk about what the importance is of going into a conversation like this prepared with your story. How do you start this conversation? We've prepared for it. Now how do we start it? Right? So we want to, it's important when you have your conversations with people that you are congruent and succinct with your story, and it means something to you, right? That it's important enough for you to convey to the persons or persons the story correctly, right? With facts, depending, of course, on who you're talking to. But facts usually hold up well. And believe it or not, feelings, sharing your feelings add value to the conversation. You're showing a little vulnerability. You're opening yourself up to, hey, this is who I am. You're bringing yourself into more of a human side of, just instead of being the manager, giving this bad news, right? This hard news to hear. If you're more on the vulnerable humility side, right, it might come across a little bit differently. It might be received differently. Any questions about that? In addition to not only telling and preparing your story, and you'll see highlights about that up here, certain questions about how to answer or how to tell your story, what's going on, right? Thinking about the wider impact of not just being between you and that person, but the whole organization. So an example, we talked about the food earlier, right? And the waitress and sending back your food, right? So a courageous conversation for the waitress and you might be, I want to send back the food. What's the wider impact for you? Not much, right? But what's the wider impact now to them, listening to their story? It's a dialogue, not a debate. You're not here up on this ladder screaming down to people and telling them what you want and need. You're down the ladder and you're having a dialogue. Yankelovich has a research findings that debate and dialogue are completely different, which I think we can all agree to. Debate is when you got to win, 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 win. Not much is going to get accomplished. A dialogue is when you're actually conversing back and forth. You're listening to their needs. You're telling them what your needs are, right? And with that, you're understanding what the wider impact is to you, to them, to everyone. Okay. I was in a conference probably 2 years ago, and it was about listening. And there were probably 300 of us in there, and we were all paired up. And every other person, 150 of us, had a little bell inside our palm that we had to hold on to. And the object was to ring the bell every time we found ourselves not listening to the other person talking to us. When we found our minds wandering off, the inner chatter in our minds wandering off. And I can tell you, the room was never silent. Listening is one of the hardest things to do. When you're listening to somebody, you're validating them, right? If you can paraphrase back to them, you're reiterating what they said, you're understanding them and showing them that you understand. If your mind is going, it's not going to validate what they're saying, and you might get caught up in things. Now, another tidbit about listening and telling your own story, listening to others and telling your story, is to remember the questions you answered at the beginning, the preparation you did, right? If you find yourself ending up in a debate, let me ask you, have you ever found yourself in a debate when you had a conversation? Have you, Joan, found yourself in a debate? Have you ever found yourself in a dialogue?
Yeah.
Okay. It's harder, right? It's harder. We can all admit that.
When the stakes are high, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say it's harder.
Because the emotions are running, right? And so what ends up happening, especially when you're 40 years old talking to a 17-year-old, I behave like a 17-year-old, so my emotions are going up like this. So what you all have to do, and myself included, is remind ourselves, what did we want to achieve? What was the end result we wanted to come out of this conversation? How is it going to benefit me? How is it going to benefit my child, my coworker, my team? How is it going to benefit us, the organization? It's hard. There's no easy way to do it, right? But if we can try to, when we find ourselves in that debating of this is the way it is and it has to be, and you're finding yourself, your emotions are running high, try to bring yourself down and remember the questions in preparing. And you might even get off kilter, right? It might go a completely different way. And you're going to say to yourself, why did I prepare those things? It's not going to help. It's a structure. It's a way that if you start to make your mind think that way, that when you're in the heat of the discussion, and if it tends to get off track, you have the ability now to get yourself back on track because you've already gone through the exercise and the process. Any questions of where we are? How to get through those 3 tactics. Okay? You Again, you have it all in your handout here, the highlights. You're not going to walk away saying, what did she say about telling my story? And what did she say about listening to their story? You've got your bullet points here that are going to help you with that. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is have you get on back up. Remember, the idea here is you can actually put those down. Shake your arms out a little bit. You've been sitting for a few minutes, relax. And as my British friends say, let's just mill about. Just walk on around. Just walk on around. Come on, Joan, you can join us. There you go. Excellent. All right, and then stop. Find a person as close to you as possible, and there's your new partner. And then go sit back down.
Morning.
We are going to do a great exercise. This next exercise is going to take us through some time, and I want you to put yourself into it as much as you can. Okay? Label yourselves A or B. One
A.
Okay, so who is A?
I'm A.
If you can hold off reading through for just a moment, I will give you your instructions. Who's A? Okay, you're both A.
Fight for it.
Fight for it, fight for it. Don't get into a debate. Okay, who's A? Okay. So this is the idea. If you can hold off reading for just a moment, I'll give you some instruction. The idea behind this exercise is for you to role play. Okay, and for you to understand how a manager might come across having this courageous conversation and how the team member is going to be portrayed having this conversation. And the idea here is for you to take kind of, with what you're going to read about your character, take what you've just learned about preparing for the conversation, listening to the other person's story as they respond to your story, and put it all together as much as you can when you're having this courageous conversation. So you all the A's are managers and all the B's are the team members. If you need to stand up and walk around or go to another spot in the room, that's quite all right. You don't have to stay sedentary. So you will have about 5 minutes. So take a moment to read through, and then I'll give you the go-ahead, and then you can go. Are there any questions so far? No? Okay. Just a couple seconds more to read up, and don't worry if you don't get everything, it's just to get the basic idea of who your character is.
I believe the two of you mentioned you were in improv earlier. Okay, so,
Okay.
yeah, okay.
Great. Okay, so the challenge here is to put these tactics into place, right, with your characters. So have fun with it, try to put as much emotion as you can into it, and the most validity as you can with what you've just learned. And if you have any questions while you're going through it, feel free to just kind of say, I need a little help, but I will walk around and I'll be here to assist if need be. All right, go ahead, enjoy.
Thanks so much for coming in, Deanna.
So if there are-
Super busy, and I appreciate you coming in.
I have a problem.
I just wanted a chance to chat with you and see how,
About your
like I said, we're really
performance.
busy. I haven't gotten to check in with you lately and see how things are going for you. Things are fine.
So, you know,
Anything that you feel like you want to or feel comfortable talking to me about recently?
fabulous member of the team.
So-
I don't know, I'm not just, we're buddies, it's not just work stuff, but life stuff or anything.
Game, and they're a company
So I know you've been on my team for a year and a half
Okay.
now.
Well, you know, I've really enjoyed working with you this past year and a half. And I feel like you bring so much to the team and
And,
we wouldn't be the same team without you. It's true. The reason I asked you, if there's something going on, I'm not putting you on the spot at all. My personal life, I'm pretty comfortable sharing. Put pictures up on Facebook, I'm sharing. Not everyone is, and that's totally okay. But I feel like lately, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there might be a little something going on because it feels like there's a couple of instances where you're not doing your normal self as much. And we all go through different times when that happens, and I don't think that's who you are across the board as a team member. But again, it feels like there's been a little shift recently. Would you agree with me at all, or are you like, what is she talking about?
No, I mean, I know, I've been coming in late.
Yeah.
Just purely by accident.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Of course, yeah.
So I don't want to get into all of it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that is it,
So we wouldn't be having
just
this
recently
conversation just a couple of times. I can cope with
tend to do. And I think that
And so
whatever's going on with your late nights
Can you
and
say
stuff,
more about how
we all
that's,
experience
I
that
don't
part of the other, but because you're so important to this team, and because we value your work,
affecting the
love
way
it
you're
if
showing up at work.
we can focus on maybe whatever we can do coming up, particularly for this project, it's going to suffer. Whatever I can do to help you so that that doesn't happen as much. And maybe that'll just not happen anymore on its own because, but is there anything that we could do to help you?
Okay. And is there anything that we can...
Yeah, so
do you need some
the things I've said, that
do you want to think
do you agree with them?
Yeah, which I know you do.
That's a relief
You have
to
in
me.
the past, so,
support you as you go through this.
right, I have to remind myself.
So do you, so we both,
Get more
do we agree that you can't continue this way?
So I don't think, you could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't feel like we're just debate at all with this great dialogue. I also feel like.
Talk about, so you're having a great
Oh.
manager.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm the
but-
best manager in the world. I wonder if I'm totally achieving my goal. I mean, she did say that she'd address the behavior, so I guess I am.
If this
That's
works
excellent.
out,
Came to a
how I
resolution.
should lead with
Yeah, maybe not as specific.
She
Maybe getting
important here.
Yeah, you are. I've been told that you are.
Because part of it is actually from...
That's
So
excellent.
let's say that could be, is the medium term, that might.
Okay, well, I'll throw in another thing just for fun and practice. So great, I'm really
One
glad
more
that
minute.
we've had this chat, and if you ever want to talk to me about anything more, and what I don't want to have happen is have, Jerry above me say, what's going on? One of your team members
So if you
isn't
can tell me what's...
late, and because he doesn't know you as well, and so it'd be easier for him to look down. And so I'm really glad that I feel like we're both on the same page, and we can move forward so that we avoid that situation. Yeah.
Just ensuring that you're able to deliver what the business
Yeah.
I didn't
Well,
mention how
certainly,
you've
I mean,
been
I can definitely talk to
handled,
HR about that.
I feel like
HR might.
you are self-aware enough.
30 seconds, we're gonna tie it
I
up.
haven't been on top of things, so I don't feel like I should say, there's coffee stains on your shirt.
Is there
Isn't it
anything you or
interesting,
I?
because I feel like some people, you couldn't say that to, and some people
Your
you
schedule, talk more about that, we'll do a better schedule.
yeah.
Well, not really sure.
10,
Yeah.
9, 7,
What that
6.
was?
So the short term, we can put that on as a because you still keep showing if this is going to be something
5,
that goes on for
4,
a series of months, years, then we need to have another conversation.
3, 2, 1. Okay, let's tie it on up. You guys were so, having such a great conversation, I didn't want to, I was like, I just couldn't. It sounded wonderful. All of your conversations sounded wonderful. In fact, I think Deanna and Marion ended up coming with a resolution. I'm curious to know from all of you, what did you find from this exercise? Obviously, you were pretending, right, to be a particular character, but what came out of it for you? Did any emotions start running high for you at any point? Did you have to find yourself scooching down and not debating, or was the dialogue just flowing back and forth that really didn't come into play? So if you wouldn't mind sharing with everybody, we can all learn from each other. Joan, would you mind sharing?
Well, I think that whenever I perceive him to be not really genuinely concerned about me, just saying he was concerned, but really it was all about the company, it really shut me down and kind of made me annoyed. And then there were times when I felt like he actually was concerned and willing to work with me, and I felt I would come forward.
You bring up a really good point right now, something I probably should have shared with you all earlier, so I apologize. One of the most amazing things about conversations is we all bring our own assumptions and experience and culture into our interpretations of conversations or interpretations of events. Okay, and we actually have the ability internally to change the way we interpret what people are saying. So I'm curious, because you just brought this up, Joan, did you reinterpret what Sebastian was saying, or did he actually change the way he was saying it?
I wouldn't know that.
You wouldn't know, okay.
I mean, it's all my interpretation.
It's all your interpretation. There you go. I'm just curious, did you?
Is the personal issue.
Uh-huh.
You know, so because I don't think it's my place as a manager to start inquiring after people's. I mean, they can volunteer it, but I can't ask about it. So it has to be from a business context.
Absolutely.
Perspective.
That's
Do you
okay.
think that's right?